I'm James Rosone.
And I'm Miranda Watson. We're the husband and wife writing team that created the military thriller Monroe Doctrine series and the military sci-fi series The Rise of the Republic.
We have some additional content we'd like to share with you guys today, and we hope you'll find it informative and entertaining. We're planning to create more videos similar to this in the future.
As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get started.
Chapter 39. Never Too Old. 20 November 1990. Cleaver Construction Company, Evansville, Indiana. Evansville, Indiana, was a quiet town on the banks of the Ohio River. Like any Midwestern town, it had its Veterans Day parade and fireworks on the 4th of July. On Armed Forces Day, a serviceman couldn't order a beer or dinner that someone else didn't pay for. On Veterans Day, the heroes of World War II, and a few still around from the Great War, wore red poppies in their buttonholes. Even the Vietnam veterans were treated with quiet respect. Mr. Cleaver was seated in his office overlooking Marina Point Park. He loved the view from his office window, as he could keep an eye on his pet project. By day, Mr. Bob Cleaver owned a construction equipment company selling Caterpillar tractors and other heavy equipment to the construction industry. He had built the company from the ground up after coming home from the Korean War at the age of 21. He had served in the Navy aboard a landing ship, tank, commonly known as an LST. He remembered those years fondly, and when the opportunity had come along to relive that time, he'd jumped at it. Bob and a group from the chamber had purchased and restored an LST, the LST-325, who had seen action in the Normandy invasion. Over the years, the ship would cruise the inland waterways, stopping at communities along the way and giving lectures to anyone who came aboard. The admission fee helped maintain the ship. The crew were all volunteers. His intercom buzzed. "What's up, Katie?" "Sir, you have a call on line 1, his secretary replied. "It's the mayor." "Okay, I got it," Cleaver said and punched the appropriate button on this desk phone. "Mr. Mayor, what do I owe the pleasure?" Bob asked. He was golfing buddies with the mayor, but he liked jerking his chain with the political title. "Bob, you'll never guess who I got a phone call from. The President of the United States," Mayor Zach said with some excitement. "Wow, does he want you to run for the office in 2 years?" Bob asked with a grin. "No, he wants to activate our ship," Zach said with excitement dripping from his lips. "You're shitting me, right?" Bob said as he suddenly sat up straight in his chair. "He really bought into the bullshit story about the ship being available?" "I guess so, because he's sending a Navy captain down tomorrow to see you. Be nice to him," Zach almost pleaded. "Call me when you see him." The knock on the door got Bob's attention as he looked up from the newspaper article he'd been reading about the deployments to the Middle East that had been going on for the past 3 months. "Mr. Cleaver," his rather attractive secretary in the tight skirt said, "there is a naval officer, a captain, I think, here to see you." Folding his paper, Bob was thinking, so they really want to take her. Got to be something in this for us. We bought that ship, we restored it, and did it all with our own money. Not about to just give it away, regardless of what Zach says. Hell, the city didn't even help us. As the secretary turned, and Bob followed the shape of her rear, he was thinking, oh, to be young again. "Send him in," Bob said as he stood and came around his desk. The Navy captain, in his blue uniform with 3 rows of ribbons, walked in with his white hat tucked under his left arm and his right hand extended. "Mr. Cleaver, Captain Ambrose, sir. Thank you for seeing me." "Captain, it's a pleasure," Cleaver said, noticing the firm handshake that the captain offered. "Have a seat, please. I understand you want our ship," he said, pointing to an overstuffed pair of chairs with a coffee table. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you," Captain Ambrose said, taking a seat. "Sir, I'll come right to the point of my visit. I do want your ship, LST-325. "I heard," Bob said, attempting to cover any emotion. "I should have said the U.S. Navy wants your ship. It is operational, is it not? Damn right it's operational, but why would the Navy want our ship? I don't understand. Bob was sitting on the edge of his chair, hands folded and elbows on his knees. He wanted to be sure he was hearing correctly. Mr. Cleaver, the U.S. Navy is short landing craft in the Middle East. After Vietnam, the Boxer-class LSTs were put out of service. The Navy acquired a new class of LST, the Ticonderoga class, and those were phased out in 1979 for the LCAS ships. The bottom line is we don't have enough landing craft for our needs now. We're in the same boat with minesweepers. Your ship is one of 4 LSTs still afloat, and one of those is a derelict on the banks of the Columbia River. One is a ferry boat out of New London, Connecticut, and no longer capable of open ocean cruising. One is in Michigan, and is also a ferry, but the bow doors are welded shut. Yours is the only one still, how do I say, combat ready. We need it, and we want it, Captain Ambrose said. Cleaver sat in stunned silence. Finally, the questions began to flow. How long do you want to keep her? For the duration of operations in the Middle East. A year, probably. Sweet Jesus, a year! Who's going to crew her? We'll put a Navy crew on board. We'll need a train-up as none of the crew is old enough to have served on board that class of ship. Who's paying for this operation and the maintenance on her? The United States Navy will pay for the maintenance in our possession and any repairs that are needed after she's returned to you upon joint inspection. Cleaver sat back in his chair and was silent for a minute. Tell you what, Captain. You come back and I'll have an answer for you. Mr. Cleaver, you really don't have a choice. Captain, a private citizens group purchased that ship from the Greek government. So technically it wasn't the property of the U.S. government when we got it. That same group raised the money to maintain that ship. You come back tomorrow and you'll find out if you're getting her peacefully or in a hostile takeover. Bob stood and motioned for the captain to head for the door. I'll be back in the morning, Mr. Cleaver, Captain Ambrose said, not too happy. Okay, everyone, calm down and let's get to business, Bob said as he stood on the deck of the ship. 100 men stood in front of him. Some were his age, some older, and some barely able to shave. They all had one thing in common. They were the crew of LST-325. I was approached today by the United States Navy. They want our ship right away. That brought on murmurs of, oh, hell no, not going to happen, and not without me they aren't. Gents, you need to understand, they have the power to seize the vessel. But we may have some negotiation, wiggle room. They don't have sailors that have ever sailed on this type of ship, and they need it fast. Truth is, they don't have enough landing craft to do the job. Bob paused. Question. How many of you could sign on as crew for 1 year and be ready to leave in a week? Slowly, hands started going up. Bob started counting. Bob, would we get paid if we sign on? Someone asked. I'll see that your civilian salaries are matched, and will insist on combat pay on top of that, Bob answered. Several more hands went up. Bob, would our families have that government life insurance that soldiers and sailors get? We'll insist that you're covered. A few more hands went up. Bob now had a skeleton crew, just enough men to man the ship. Bob, what about our jobs? Will we get them back when we return? Another asked. We'll make sure that you're covered just like the National Guard guys are covered and guaranteed their jobs back when they come home. More hands went up. Who will be the skipper? Another voice asked. I already spoke with Captain Harold and he told me that he'll take it to sea and he wants everyone's rank and positions to stay the same. More hands went up. Bob, can we call you in the morning after we talk to our wives? Not a problem. Talk it over with your families and call me in the morning. If you're sure you're going, pack a sea bag and wait for my call. Mr. Cleaver, Captain Ambrose is here, the secretary said, filling out her tight-knit sweater. Oh, to be young again, Bob was thinking again. Please show him in, Bob said, approaching the door and extending his hand. Captain, good morning. Please sit down. Once they were seated, he asked, "Captain, which is it going to be? A hostile seizure or a peaceful transition?" "I'm not sure what you have in mind, Mr. Cleaver. I would prefer for this to be a peaceful transition," Captain Ambrose said. "Well, if you play ball with me, it will be more than peaceful. Here's what I'm offering you." It was a sunny but cool Saturday morning. The air said winter wasn't far off. Soon ice would be forming on the banks of the river. LST-325 had experienced a flurry of activity for the past 2 weeks, with crew moving aboard, supplies being loaded, fuel being transferred. As she sat with her twin diesel engines softly running, the parking lot filled with townfolk. The local police were directing traffic to parking areas. The high school band was setting up. A stage with seats for several dignitaries and a podium were set up with a loudspeaker system. 2 Navy officers were already on the stage, along with Mayor Zach and Captain Harold, the skipper of LST-325. Finally, the time came for the dignitaries to start talking, and they did once the ship's chaplain gave the invocation, asking the Lord to give them calm seas and safe passage. One of the Baptist church choirs sang the national anthem as the high school band played. Once the dignitaries were done, Captain Ambrose stood and gave a short speech. As he concluded, he turned to Captain Harold and handed him a manila envelope. "Captain Harold, sir, here are your sailing orders and your vessel's commissioning documents." As he did so, a boatswain's pipe sounded and the commissioning pennant was hoisted on the bow of the ship. "Thank you, sir, and with your permission we will get underway," Harold said, saluting Captain Ambrose. "Godspeed, sir," Ambrose said, and returned the salute. Harold stepped off the stage and walked to the gangplank of LST-325. Once he was aboard, the gangplank was withdrawn and a loud blast on the ship's whistle was heard. The water under the stern began to churn as the 2 big props began pushing the ship into the Ohio River current. A piece of canvas had been draped over the bow on both sides. As the ship began to move, the canvas was hauled aboard and exposed the name painted about the large white numbers, USS Memorial. Hundreds of small craft escorted the vessel as she pulled away from Evansville and the families left behind. Chapter 40. Looking to the offense. 21st November 1990, Softuait. Airborne Corps HQ, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. General Luck was reading over the reports of the actions against the 2nd Iraqi Army Corps from General Peters. The 101st Airborne Division had stopped them with the help of Navy attack aircraft and the enemy's crappy logistics system. Everyone had known the first asset was going to be a powerful tool. No one had known how good, or in this case, how bad, the Iraqi logistical system was. Having 2 of the world's largest gas stations, could the Iraqis be so incompetent that they could not fuel their vehicles? With respect to the 2nd Iraqi Army Corps, that was the case. But what about the other forces? Could the 2nd Republican Guard Corps be experiencing the same issue? They hadn't moved since the Battle of Medina Ridge. Throughout the night and the next day, reports from the 217th Cav indicated that the 2nd Iraqi Army Corps was not only hurt, but withdrawing back to where they started this attack from. Intelligence reports indicated that the 2nd Infantry Division and the 14th Division were still in the Tabuk area and not moving. Time to give General Yosak some good news for a change. "Sir, General Yosak is on the line," General Luck's aide informed him, and he quickly reached for the phone. "John, Gary here. How was your day?" General Luck said. Although Yosak was Luck's boss, rank between lieutenant generals was like virtue among whores. In private, they were all equal. "Right now I could use some good news. I understand that the 2nd Iraqi Army Corps has stopped his attack," Yosak said. "Well, let's say he's resumed his attack, but he's attacking to the north," Luck said. It took Yosak a minute to comprehend what he'd just heard. "Wait, are you saying he's withdrawing?" Yosak asked, with a touch of excitement in his voice. "He is, according to the Cav at the 101st. Seems he's pulling back. Don't know how far back he's going, but we're going to keep watching him for a while," Luck explained. "That's great news. Give my congratulations to Peters, and I'll be sure Norm hears about this." "What were Peters's casualties?" Yosak asked. "Not bad. Lost a couple of choppers and some of the infantry were roughed up. But overall he's in good shape. He attributes their success to 3 things. The first is their attack helicopters, which we all figured would be a boon to the fight. The second and third, however, were deal breakers, he feels," Luck said. "Okay, are you going to tell me or keep me in suspense?" Yosak complained. "Well, the second was the terrain. The Corps couldn't operate in the mountainous terrain. Regiments were committed in piecemeal fashion. Whenever he could mount a 2-regiment front, they would hit him with airstrikes. The priority for the ground soldiers was to take out the air defense weapons that for some reason, in one division's case, had been positioned in the lead and on the flanks," Luck explained. "And the third factor? What was that?" Yosak's interest was really piqued. "Logistics, and specifically fuel. He's out of fuel. He parked a mess of tanks that were above his normal complement, and we think it's because he doesn't have the fuel to run them," Luck stated. "You've got to be kidding me. He has 2 of the world's largest gas stations and he can't move it? Is that what you're saying?" "Look, I don't know what it's like over in the east, but over here the 10th Saudi Brigade did a good job of scorched earth when they pulled out of Tabuk. There are few roads in the interior coming south, and what gas stations and fuel farms there were, the Saudis destroyed. All his fuel has to come by truck from over on the east to Tabuk, and then south to where he is. He can't get enough fuel for a major push now. I'm wondering if your intel people are seeing the same thing with the 2nd Republican Guard Corps or any other units," Luck questioned. "No one has said anything, but I'll raise the flag on that one. That might just be the deal breaker. On another subject, and I want you to keep this close for now, I want you to start thinking about going on the offense. Norm's been notified that we're going to get the forces we want. Fred Franks is here now and bringing the 7 Corps from Germany, and Yvonne is coming in tomorrow, bringing in 3 Corps headquarters, along with 1 National Guard heavy division. 3 infantry divisions from the Guard are also coming, thinking of giving you one of those infantry divisions for sure, and maybe 2. Think how you would use them all and get back to me in a week or 2. Okay?" Yosak asked rather than ordered, but the message was clear. Chapter 41. Everyone is asking. 21st November 1990. Situation Room, White House, Washington, D.C. The president was up at his usual time. The crisis in the Middle East was taking most of his time now, but there were still other matters that had to be dealt with. Congress wanted constant hand-holding and briefs on what was going on, and congressional leadership asked for constant updates. Half the members of Congress were grandstanding for the hometown vote, supporting mobilization, and the other half were paying lip service to supporting the effort while dragging their feet on bills to support the effort. As he walked to the Situation Room, his mind was in a different arena. This damn Budget Enforcement Act is going to be the death of me yet. Why in the hell did I ever say no new taxes? This is a damn good bill, and it's going to reduce the deficit over a 10-year period since we now have a major conflict on our hands that's costing us a pretty penny. As he approached the door to the Situation Room, the Marine sentry opened the door. "Thank you, young man," the president said. "You're welcome, Mr. President," the young Marine responded. He would write home tonight to his parents to say that he'd talked to the President of the United States today. "Keep your seats," he said when he'd cleared the door. "Let's get started. What have you got for me today, Colonel Atwell?" the president asked as he sat down, and a military aide set a cup of coffee in front of him. "Sir, we're going to cover some recent developments in the AOR, current status of the major forces and deployment actions. First slide, please," Colonel Atwell called. 2 slides came up. The one on the right was a map of the western side of Saudi Arabia. The left slide was a satellite photo of the same area. Atwell continued. Sir, in the last 48 hours, the 2nd Iraqi Army Corps with the 7th, 37th, and 51st Infantry Divisions launched an attack south against the 101st Airborne Division in this location. A red laser point appeared on the map. With assistance from Navy aircraft located in the Red Sea, that attack was stopped. The 7th Division appears to be at 40% strength now, and the 51st Division is approximately 30% strength. The 37th Infantry Division was never committed. It also appears that they're experiencing a fuel shortage, as they have almost double the number of tanks associated with an infantry division, but have parked them all in this location, as seen on this satellite photo. The photo showed a large number of tanks parked in neat rows. Looking very happy, the president said, "Damn, those airborne people are worth their weight in gold. Well, what are we going to do about this tank park?" The president looked at the Joint Chiefs and the SecDef. "Sir, a flight of B-52s out of Diego Garcia are en route to take care of that tank park. Right about now, they're flying up the Red Sea," Mr. Cheney said. "Are we sure they're still there?" "Yes, Mr. President. We have eyes on the target." "Good," the president said, turning back to Colonel Atwell. "Continue, Colonel." In the east, the 1st Republican Guard Corps is continuing to adjust its positions, while the 9th Iraqi Corps moves into positions in the UAE. Next slide, please. As you can see, sir, instead of occupying the major cities of Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the 9th Corps commander has moved his forces out along the border region more and is preparing defensive positions across the front. Does General Schwarzkopf now feel he has the forces necessary to get the job done? The president asked. Sir, once the 50th Armored Division arrives and the rest of 7 Corps closes in along with the 3 Corps headquarters, he feels he'll have the combat power he needs to take back the UAE. It remains to be seen if he will be able to move on from there, or if Saddam commits some of his other available divisions. Remember, sir, Saddam has the 4th largest army in the world, and 50 divisions at his disposal, plus a sizable air force to back up his army, Mr. Cheney interjected. The president just grunted and turned to face Colonel Atwell. Colonel, I'm sure you have a nice, neat presentation planned for this morning, but I'm pressed today, so let me shoot questions, and let's see who's in the know now, the president said with a smile that only Colonel Atwell could see. These shoot-from-the-hip questions made all the generals and secretaries very nervous, as Colonel Atwell wasn't expected to have the immediate answers. But they were. How's the flow for the 7 Corps going? Do I need to call the Prime Minister? The president asked, looking around the table. Finally, General Powell spoke up. The flow is going well, Mr. President. The German and Dutch transportation systems are bending over backwards to move our stuff as quickly as possible to the ports. Priority has been given to our rail moves, and the national police in both countries are guiding and escorting our convoys expeditiously through major cities. We're not having any problems at this time. Good. How about ships? Are we getting the right types and enough of them? The president asked. Powell looked to Admiral Kelso, who looked right back at him. The Army was responsible for obtaining and loading ships, not the Navy, but the Navy owned the ships of the military Sea Lift fleet. Once the ship left the dock, it was the Navy's responsibility, but to shipside and loading was the Army's responsibility. To terminate the staring contest between them, Mr. Cheney spoke up. There's a limited number of ro-ro ships, Mr. President, and we have contracted for any and all that the shipping companies can provide. They've even cut back on commercial traffic to accommodate our needs. What's the status of our 4 National Guard divisions? How soon will they be deployed? Sir, General Vuono said, the 50th Armored Division is en route to ports in New Orleans and Beaumont, Texas, for shiploading. The soldiers commence flying over in a week, arriving about a week before their equipment. The 29th Infantry has shipped its equipment from Norfolk, and its people start flying over tomorrow from Richmond. The 28th Infantry Division is en route to the National Training Center for certification, and will be followed by the 35th Infantry Division. As each finishes their training, their equipment will be shipped straight over from Oakland. General Schwarzkopf felt that he could start things off without them, and would not need them until he started moving up the east side of Saudi and taking Riyadh, General Vuono concluded. "How are our air assets holding up?" the president asked. "The air assets are holding, sir," General McPeak said. "We are able to attain air parity in most cases and superiority for short periods. As we receive additional support from the Navy and our allies, I believe we will be able to claim air superiority. We are a bit surprised, however, as to the ability of many of their pilots and the quality of their aircraft. They have the latest Soviet fighters and are flying them extremely well. In addition, they have the Soviet air defense systems and are employing them en masse. Possibly the folks over at Langley can enlighten us as to where this stuff is coming from," he concluded. This was General McPeak's first time in the Situation Room with the president. His predecessor had been relieved the previous month because he couldn't keep his mouth shut when being interviewed by the press. He divulged that we knew the location of Saddam every day and could take him out very quickly. After that, Saddam had never stayed in the same place 2 nights in a row. "Let me ask the million-dollar question. When does General Schwarzkopf think he'll be ready to launch an all-out offensive?" the president asked. The cone of silence descended on the room. Finally, Mr. Cheney spoke up. "Sir, we need to consult with him before we answer that question. A lot of factors are going to come into play before we can give you an accurate date. We have a lot of forces still to move into the area. We have a logistics buildup that needs to take place. There is required training of not only the Guard units but the units from the 7th Corps, just to name a few items." "Well, can you give me a ballpark date? Look, I've got Margaret asking, along with the King, the Sultan of Oman, and the Emir of Kuwait. I'd like to be able to give them something," the president said. "Right now, Mr. President, I would hazard a guess that we're looking at a spring offensive," Mr. Cheney said. He could tell that the president wasn't happy with that response, but accepted it without comment, and stood, indicating the meeting was over. Chapter 42. Thanksgiving. 27th November, 1990. Middle East. Thanksgiving dinner was one of 2 times a year when service cooks went above and beyond the call of duty. It was second only to Christmas dinner. This was the time for the cooks to shine. And they normally did. Fixing Thanksgiving dinner normally took a couple of days, especially for the Army cooks who were working out of field kitchens designed more for T rations than A rations. "Sir, Sarge Jones is here to see you," Lester said, opening the door of Corey's vehicle. Corey looked up from his writing. "Sergeant Jones, how are things in Jonestown?" Sergeant First Class Jones was the mess sergeant for the 3rd Battalion, 327th. Corey considered him a lot more than just a mess sergeant. Just after they'd arrived in sector and things had settled down, Jones had insisted on getting a couple of 2.5-ton trucks to run back to Jeddah. No questions asked. 2 days later, Corey had stumbled across a camp of 5 GP medium tents with cots, shower point, and a mess section. It seemed that Sergeant Jones had built a camp for the rifle companies to come back to for a 24-hour rest every 5 days, situation permitting. The soldiers loved it and dubbed it Jonestown. "Sir, things are going just fine. I think the boys like the idea of coming off the line for 24 hours and getting a cold shower and sleeping on a cot. We also make sure they have a hot T-rat meal when they come in and a hot breakfast when they leave." "Well, I can tell you from talking to the kids, Jonestown is a hell of a morale booster." "I thank you," Corey said. "What's on the menu for Thanksgiving dinner?" "This year's Thanksgiving will not only include turkey and ham, but compliments of the Saudi king, quail is also being served. We'll have mashed potatoes, green beans, corn, rolls, apple and pecan pie, as well as pumpkin pie, all fresh and no T-rats," Jones said with some pride. "Oh my God, I'm hungry already. Are we sure we have enough for everyone?" "Sir, The brigade mess sergeant attempted to short us, but we got our fair share. We good. We also have fresh milk. Been a bitch of a time keeping it cold to stop it from spoiling, but then we discovered that it's that milk that tastes just like regular milk but doesn't need to be refrigerated. Comes from Germany. I'll take your word for it. How are we going to feed the guys on the line? Sir, the XO has a plan for that. We have enough Marmite cans that we can truck out food to the line doggies and serve them right there, Jones said. Okay, but I don't want the cooks exposed. Wherever you set up, I want you behind something so you're not seen from the Iraqi positions. Understood? Yes, sir. I have no intention of exposing my guys. Sergeant Brewer sat on top of his track vehicle, overlooking the other track vehicles in the company. He was a member of the 1st British Armoured Division, 4th Brigade, 1st Battalion Royal Scots, and proud of the fact that they were the oldest regiment of the Royal Army. They were enjoying a Thanksgiving dinner as well. Hey, Sarge, do the Yanks eat like this every day? Private Harrison asked. Harrison, are you daft? These Yanks are celebrating a holiday in their country called Thanksgiving. Supposedly, when the first ships arrived in America, the people sat down with the indigenous population and had a great feast. This celebrates that event. The rest of the year they live on them bloody MRE rations, Brewer said. Well, it's better than the bullet beef we've been getting. I'm so sick of eating that stuff I enjoy an MRE when we get them. I'm going to see if I can get some more of this food. Should I bring you back another plate? You damn well better not come back here without a plate for me, mate, Brewer said with a smile. As in most homes, Thanksgiving Day in the Hanner household was a day of family, good food, and football. That was the way it had always been since Ed was a little boy. Usually there would be a smoked salmon on the table as well, if Ed had had a pretty good summer fishing off the Oregon coast during the salmon run. He liked to catch them before they swam up the rivers. Ed's kids, a son, 8, and a daughter, 10, regarded smoked salmon like candy. Dad, did we get a letter from Mom yesterday? Brian, Ed's son, asked as he walked into the kitchen in his pajamas. Afraid not. She's really busy in her job over there, Ed tried to explain. Wendy had joined the National Guard unit in Coos Bay when money had gotten tight. Ed had a good job in the Weyerhaeuser plywood mill, but a growing family needed a bit more than Ed was making at the time, so she joined for the extra money. Her part-time National Guard duty had turned into full-time work at the armory. When the unit had been called up, she'd had to go too. Oh. Well, are we going to have a Thanksgiving dinner? Brian asked. You bet, Tiger. The turkey has been thawing for 3 days, and I just put it in the oven stuffed with sausage stuffing. You and Sissy can help me make the mashed potatoes and the broccoli. Yuck, I don't like broccoli, Brian said with a matching facial expression. Well then, you can help with the smashed sweet potatoes. Oh, double yuck. Mashed sweet potatoes look like earwax, Brian complained. Well then, you can do the dishes because everyone has to pitch in around here, Ed said in a tone of frustration. He was trying, but he was beginning to realize life for a working wife wasn't easy. About then, the doorbell rang. Sissy, can you answer the door, please? Ed yelled, his hands wet as he washed the potatoes. I can't! I'm drying my hair! Make Brian do it! A voice from down the hall commanded. Brian, go answer the door. I can't. I'm still in my PJs. Oh hell, who could this be? Ed was thinking, grabbing a towel as the doorbell rang again. He walked across the living room with Brian in tow behind him. Boomer, the dog, continued to enjoy his favorite chair. Ed's chair. Ed opened the door in a bit of a huff. Yes, what? Oh, hi, Mrs. Esser, he said, quickly changing his attitude. Come on in. Excuse the mess, he said as he stepped back and held the door open for her. The kids just got up and haven't gotten to their chores yet. Brian has to get dressed. Boomer, get down. Brian left to get dressed. Boomer didn't move, but continued to lie in Ed's chair as Mrs. Esser stepped in. Mrs. Esser lived across the street with her retired husband. He had been a logger his whole life, working in the forest in southwestern Oregon. Their kids were grown, and living in Portland and San Francisco but seldom came and visited. Ed, I can't stay, but Bob and I would like you and the kids to join us for dinner. We'll be eating about 3 o'clock, and it's very casual. I have a ham ready to go in the oven and lots of trimmings. Gee, I don't know what to say. That's mighty nice of you, but I have a turkey in the oven right now and… Good, you can bring it over? And I've made a pumpkin pie as well as mincemeat pie. I remember Wendy saying you liked mincemeat pie. Dad, just say yes, a small voice sounded off. Ed turned to see both the kids in the doorway. Mrs. Esser's cooking is way better than yours, Sissy said. She followed up with, Your cooking isn't bad, Dad, but hers is so much better. Nice recovery, kid. You'll be eating Swanson frozen dinners for the next month, Ed replied. He turned back to Mrs. Esser. I guess I'm overruled, and I'll bring the turkey. Is there anything else we can bring? Brian and Sissy gave each other a high-five slap. No, just dress casual, and we'll see you at 2:30 for a cocktail before dinner. See you, kids. Bye, Mrs. Esser, the kids responded in unison as she departed. Brian turned and noticed the smiles on the kids' faces. It was going to be an okay Thanksgiving after all. Boomer didn't move. Chapter 43. Time to get serious. Further December 1990. CENTCOM forward. HQ, Military Technological College, Muscat, Oman. General Schwarzkopf had called the meeting, and his key leaders were in attendance. When Storeman Norman walked into the room, everyone stood and stopped talking. Sit down, gentlemen, he directed, and took a seat at the head of the table. How is everyone doing today? You all get enough to eat Thursday? He asked, not expecting a negative answer from anyone. I've asked you here this afternoon to give you an idea of what I'm thinking about where we go from here. As you know, the 1st Republican Guard Corps switched out with the 9th Corps, who is preparing defensive positions close to the border versus sitting back in the cities. The 9th Corps has 6 divisions, of which he left 2 infantry divisions back in Saudi to secure oil refineries. That leaves only 4 divisions to face us, but I expect we'll get a strong counterattack from the 1st Republican Guard Corps once we launch our attack. Once the 7th Corps closes in, and we get the 50th Armored Division settled along with the 2 Egyptian divisions, and what we currently have on the ground, I believe we'll be ready to go on the offensive. The President has been good about not pushing me, but Cheney was asked for a date. I want time to build an overwhelming force that's logistically well-stocked, and an air campaign that gives us air superiority from day one. What I need from you gentlemen is an idea of when you think you'll be ready to launch the attack, Schwarzkopf explained. I want to review what we have in-country now and what will arrive within 90 days. Let's start with the Army assets, General Yosak. Yosak, like all the key leaders, had prepared a slide showing the Army assets in-country or arriving in the next 90 days. Sir, as you can see, we have 3 Army Corps headquarters on the ground at this time with habitual Corps-related assets, to include combat support and service support. Those are Ixtinco Airborne, 7th Corps, and 3rd Corps. 3rd Corps and 7th Corps are located here in Oman, and Angstint is located in Jeddah. Yosak paused for a moment. Division-wise, we have the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions, and the 24th ID with the 197th attached. 1st Armored Division and 3rd Armored Division will complete closing by the end of next month. 1st Infantry Division is flowing at this time. 1st Cav Division has closed as of yesterday. We have the 3rd and 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiments and the 18th and 12th Aviation Brigades, each with 2 battalions of attack helicopters. The British 1st Armored Division is also completely closed and is here in Oman. The 50th Armored Division is in its mobilization station and will ship its first vehicles this week. The 29th Infantry Division is shipping his vehicles out of Norfolk this week, and his people fly out tomorrow. The 28th Infantry Division is at the NTC at this time, and the 35th Infantry Division is at the Joint Readiness Training Center going through final train-up. All 4 National Guard divisions will be here by the end of the 90-day period, Yosok said, pausing to take a drink of water. What are the host nations bringing? Schwarzkopf asked. Sir, they've brought and closed in-country the 3rd Mech and 4th Armored Egyptian Divisions. They're flowing into Salalah at this time. The Saudis have the 20th, 10th, and 8th Mech Brigades, the last 2 being in Yanbu. They also have the 45th Armored Brigade, which is in Jeddah, and the 2nd Saudi National Guard Brigade. Kuwait has the 35th Mech and 15th Infantry Brigades, along with the Al-Fatah Brigade. Oman has given us a brigade with a UAE Mech battalion attached. That's all for Army right now, Yosok said. Schwarzkopf sat for a minute, lost in thought with his eyes cast down, almost as if he was sleeping. Looking up, he asked, "Do you think in 90 days you'll have the ground forces to take the UAE?" Without hesitation, Yosok replied, "Yes, sir, we can." Suddenly, this meeting had new meaning to those present. Looking across the table at Vice Admiral Maus, Schwarzkopf asked, "How are we looking at sea?" "Sir, currently there are or will be 6 aircraft carriers on station. Midway, Ranger, Kennedy, Saratoga, America, and Roosevelt. Eisenhower has already rotated home. Both of our battleships are present, Missouri and Wisconsin. We have 18 cruisers, 13 destroyers, 15 frigates, 1 submarine, and 2 hospital ships," the Admiral said. Maus was new to the staff, having only recently been appointed at Comus Navcent. This doesn't include the British, Canadian, or Australian naval forces, which you have already been briefed on. "What about the Gator Navy?" Schwarzkopf asked, surprising everyone that he knew the nickname for the amphibious fleet. "Sir, we have 8 amphibious assault ships, 28 landing ships, and 5 minesweepers, not counting what our British friends have brought," Maus replied, nodding to acknowledge the British commander present. "When's the last time they exercised a major amphibious assault?" Schwarzkopf asked, getting everyone's attention. "Sir, I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you on that," Admiral Maus said. "General Boomer, do you know when they last exercised a full-blown amphibious assault?" Stormin Norman asked, looking at the Marsent commander. "Sir, a practice exercise wouldn't hurt," Boomer replied, giving the smart answer. "What Marine Corps assets have we got?" His question was directed right at General Boomer. "Sir, the 1st and 2nd Marine Divisions with the 1st Marine ashore and the 2nd on the ships. Also, the 3rd Marine Air Wing is present for duty," General Boomer replied. "Maus, Boomer, how soon can you put together a full-blown amphibious assault training exercise? Give ourselves a good evaluation on how ready we are to conduct such an exercise," Schwarzkopf asked, inwardly smiling. "They didn't expect that I can see," he was thinking. Silence held over the room for a moment as the 2 men looked at each other. Then Admiral Maus spoke up. "Sir, we can do it in 30 days, as it's a training exercise. You give us the beach, and the Gator Navy will have the 2nd Marine Division ashore in 30 days. After this meeting, see Ops, and they'll give you the beachhead. This will be a full-blown live-fire exercise, gentlemen. Understood?" Norman ordered. "Sir, do you want the ships to fire as well?" Maus asked. "Admiral, I want everything that's going to participate in an amphibious assault against the Iraqi army involved in shooting. No make-believe stuff. Blow him up, understood?" "Loud and clear, sir." "General Horner, how are we looking as far as our air assets are concerned?" Schwarzkopf asked. "Sir, currently, not including the Navy's aircraft on the 6 carriers, which will be integrated into the air campaign, we have the 14th Air Division with an assortment of fighter aircraft, the 15th Air Division with reconnaissance aircraft, the 16th Special Ops Air Division, the 17th Air Division with the refuelers, the 7th Air Division with heavy bombers, and the 7440 Composite Air Wing out of Incirlik, if we can get the Turks to allow us to use them," General Horner reported. As Horner spoke, the tension and anticipation in the room increased. Turning to the CENTCOM logistics officer, General Pegasus, Schwarzkopf asked, "What is our logistical status?" General Pegasus was prepared to answer without hesitation. "Sir, we have a 180-day stockpile of fuel, food, and ammunition at this time. We have sufficient medical facilities both ashore and at sea to service our casualties. Between what we've brought and the host nation, we have sufficient transportation to follow the forces and resupply them. Our sea and air flow of logistical supply is functioning and secure." Having heard from everyone at this point, Schwarzkopf looked around the room at the faces of those that would be responsible for executing future operations. Their faces all portrayed the same picture: confidence. They understood the risk, but also understood what was required to drive the Iraqi army back to Iraq, if not completely destroy its army and topple Saddam. "Gentlemen, in 30 days I will present the operational plan for the invasion of the UAE and the ultimate liberation of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Any questions?" He paused. "Good. Then let's get to work." Chapter 44. Planning Guidance. December 1990. CENTCOM Forward HQ, Military Technological College. Muscat, Oman. General Yosak was pleased that some decisions had been made as to when to kick things off, as were the others present in the meeting. Troops sitting for so long in country with the anticipation of going into combat, but not knowing when, was taking its toll on morale. A couple of cruise ships had been contracted to take personnel out for 3 days of rest and relaxation. However, when Yosak had visited the ships to observe who was getting to spend the 3 days, everyone appeared to be from the rear area supply and service support units, and no frontline combat soldiers or Marines. Isn't that the way it's always been? He thought as he watched the soldiers, Marines, and Air Force personnel scamper aboard. Turning to his aide, he said, "Colonel, make a note to look into how we're allocating positions on these cruise ships to the units." "Yes, sir. I'll get whoever's in charge of this program on your calendar to brief you," the aide said, as they walked back to Yosak's staff car. As they rode back to the headquarters building, Yosak was lost in deep thought. His mind was on the upcoming operation, on which he hadn't been asked for input. General Schwarzkopf was playing his cards close to his chest. He'd gone into a closed-door meeting with the CENTCOM operations officer and the Jedi Majors right after the last meeting. The Jedi Majors were being very secretive about what was being developed for an operational plan. And that bothered Yosak as well. He wasn't used to being closed out. Major Stuba had been summoned to the office of the CENTCOM G3, his immediate boss. General Schless had spoken with General Schwarzkopf and received some guidance on his view of the upcoming campaign. "Sit down, Jack," Schless said, pointing at a chair at the small conference table in his office. "I received some guidance from the general today and want to pass it on to you in your planning considerations. First, you have 30 days to come up with an acceptable operational plan that we can brief the commanders on. That will give us another 2 months to prepare for the start of the operation." "Sir, we're looking at launching in 90 days, is that right?" Major Stuba said, a bit surprised. "Yes, but that doesn't mean the ground operations will commence. The old man sees a vigorous air campaign prior to the ground campaign. One of your assumptions to make is that we have air superiority over the ground campaign. Without that, we're not going to launch a ground campaign," Schless acknowledged. As he spoke, Major Stuba was making notes. His paper was divided in half. On one side, he wrote assumptions, and on the other, directives. Schless continued, "Besides air superiority, he wants the 1st Republican Guard, the 2nd Iraqi Army Corps, and the 2nd Republican Guard Corps pounded into the Stone Age with a vigorous air campaign. General Horner's team will be getting the tasking later today to concentrate all bombing efforts on those ground forces, in addition to airfields and aid command and control centers." Again, Major Stuba was writing notes. and Schless paused long enough for him to finish. "What else, sir?" the major asked, looking up. "Second, you are to employ all our assets in this initial push. Nothing is to be held back. He wants to hit the forces in the UAE with overwhelming force. He isn't giving you any more guidance besides that, as he wants to give you free rein in your thinking. Third, once the campaign in the UAE is concluded, he wants to be able to roll right into a campaign to clear out Saudi Arabia. Again, nothing is to be held back." "Sir, what about the Zuftiot Airborne Corps in the West?" Stuba asked. "What about them?" Schless countered with a puzzled look. "Sir, they're out there on the fringe of the fight, not sure—" "Yes, they are, and so far they're the only ones that have bloodied the Iraqis' noses aside from the 10th Saudi Mech Brigade. Your plan has got to include them as well. We can't just leave them out there playing with their toes. But we still have to secure Yanbu and Jeddah, so some forces are going to have to remain there, unless of course those Iraqi forces in that area can be cleaned out in the next 90 days. I don't think that will happen. So if we figure out, or it becomes obvious that the Iraqi threat in the West can be minimized, then we can use the 101st and the 82nd, correct?" Stuba asked. "Like I said, you're free to come up with whatever plan you can, and use the forces that we have or will have when we launch the ground phase," Schless said. "Oh, keep in mind we have to be sensitive to Saudi and Muslim feelings. No U.S. forces in Medina or Mecca. Put that down as a directive. They'll have a shit fit if we roll into either of those cities. The Saudi or Arab forces have to go there, but not us. Understood?" "Yes, sir. We'll consider the 8th and 10th Saudi brigades for those targets, and Mecca has the 8th sitting there now, and no Iraqi forces are even threatening it," Stuba said. "Another thing. We want minimal damage to cities and towns. The old man doesn't want to get U.S. forces bogged down in street fighting. Leave that to host nation forces. Look at using our people to overrun and isolate the Iraqi forces. The host nation folks can do the cleaning up," Schless pointed out. Another directive Stuba noted. "Any other questions?" "No, sir. I'm sure we'll have some when we get into this," Stuba commented. "Well, the door is open, so just come and ask. I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with," Schless said, closing the discussion. Chapter 45. Find and Kill. 4th of December, 1990. 101st Airborne Division HQ, Yanbu, Saudi Arabia. General Peters had been in command of the 101st Airborne Division for a year. Getting selected to command this division was a lifetime dream for the young general officer. A graduate of VMI versus West Point, he'd believed this to be the crowning achievement of his military career when he had taken command back at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Not only was he an astute artillery officer, but he could hold his own in the political arena of the top echelons of the Army. His thoughts were interrupted by his aide. "Sir, Lieutenant Colonel Rowe is here," the aide informed him. "Good, send him in," Peters directed, as he stood and moved towards a map board. Colonel Eric Provost, the Division G3, was already in the room. "Sir, you wanted to see me?" Hawk said, entering the general's office. "Yeah, Hawk, got a little job for you. Come here." Peters motioned for Hawk to come over to the map board with the locations of friendly forces and known Iraqi forces plotted on the map. "As you know, we done kicked some Iraqi ass last week, but some got away. Well, it's time to find them and kick them again. I want you to take your birds north and find the remnants of the 7th and 51st Divisions and the 37th Division. I'm sending some TACP folks with you in your little birds. And when you find them, call in every airstrike you can and pound them into the Stone Age. Any questions?" Peters asked. "No, sir. I may need a fire-up located further north than the one at Al Ais," Hawk said, thinking out loud. "Already have one standing by to be inserted here at Bir Jida, 80 miles north of Al Ais. It's a well-protected location from any vehicular traffic. An infantry company will be securing it for you. I would suggest that the route from Al Ais to Bir Jada should first move northwest to Tawala, and then northeast back to Bir Jada. But that's up to you. How soon can you launch?" Peters asked. "Sir, 1 hour after the FARP goes in. That'll give them time to get up there and get it set up before we show up. Initially, we'll only need fuel when we get there the first time, Hawk indicated. Good. Colonel Provost will call you when they're off and en route. Good hunting, Hawk. As Hawk flew north with 2 troops, he wondered what he would find up there. He had elected to fly one of the unit's OH-58s with the senior TACP officer with him. He had 2 Cobra gunships following him. His other troop was screening forward of the 2nd Brigade and harassing the 3rd Regiment of the 51st Mechanized Division. We'll refuel in Bir Jada and then fly east at No towards Magatya to see what we can see, he told his passenger, Lieutenant Colonel Jarvis, the division TACP commander. Jarvis, like all officers in the TACP, was a fighter pilot on a TACP assignment. Sounds good, Hawk. Need to drain the bladder about now, Jarvis joked, watching camels meandering as they passed over them. As the refuel point in Bir Jada came into view, Hawk commenced a deceleration, and the 2 Cobra gunships did likewise. The rest of the troop was about an hour behind Hawk and would relieve him on station. Jarvis, however, would remain in the area, switching aircraft if they were finding targets. Yeah, I'll get it refueled while you take a piss, and then we'll get going, Hawk said, as he rolled the throttle back to flight idle and set the friction locks on the flight controls. He was going to hot refuel the aircraft. Suddenly his door was opened, startling him a bit when he noticed a young American soldier standing in the door. Sir, I'll refuel you, the young specialist said with a grin. We got nothing better to do sitting up here brushing flies off. Hawk gave him a thumbs up and released the friction locks on the controls. When the bladder on Colonel Jarvis was drained and the bladder on the aircraft full, Hawk increased the throttle and pulled in collective, executing a rapid ascent and departure. Okay, we're going to head due east in a contour flight mode until we get close, then we'll drop to No. The Cobras will keep us in sight. Let's see what we can see, Hawk said with a smile. He loved this part of the mission. Hide-and-go-seek was a favorite childhood game of his. He'd never thought he would be doing it in a helicopter someday. As they flew east, they crested a ridgeline and dropped into a ravine that initially ran north-south. There were no signs of vehicular traffic in the ravine, as it was fairly narrow. When Hawk came upon an east-west ravine, he entered it and slowed his speed down to barely a fast hover. If my navigation is correct, the town of Fadia should be on the nose in a minute or so, he said to Jarvis, as he looked down at his map strapped to his leg. Holy shit, Jarvis said in almost a whisper. What? Hawk responded, almost in a panic, and then he saw it. Laid out in neat rows side by side was a group of 50 T-72 tanks, parked in 5 rows of 10 tanks each. No crews could be seen. Do you want to take these out, or are you just along for the ride and I'm doing all the work? Hawk asked sarcastically, laughing. I'm on it! And immediately Jarvis was talking to a flight leader of a flight of 8 F-16 jets, carrying an assortment of bombs and missiles. As Hawk sat at a hover, his Cobra gunship cover was begging him to allow them to shoot. Saber elements, let's see if we can find an air defense weapon someplace around this tank farm, Hawk transmitted. It didn't take him long to spot an SA-9 Gaskin missile launcher, and where there was one, there would be 3 more, which were found equally fast. Turning to Jarvis, Hawk said, Let your guys know we've identified 4 SA-9 positions. We're going to take them out and that'll mark the target for them. 4 burning vehicles should be a pretty good marker. I know my boys would really appreciate that, Hawk. Jarvis informed the jets of the enemy situation. As Hawk hovered, his 2 Cobra gunships moved into position to engage the SA-9 launchers. Okay, Hawk, they're 1 minute out, Jarvis said. It was obvious that the SA-9s knew the jets were in the area, as their turrets began turning in the likely direction of attack for the jets. Before they could launch, however, all 4 exploded as 4 tow missiles slammed into the launchers. Hardly anyone noticed, as almost immediately the tanks began exploding. Cluster bombs and 500-pound dumb bombs ripping through the parked vehicles. As the dust settled, Hawk conducted a battlefield damage assessment. That was 50 tanks that wouldn't be engaged in any future fighting. Returning to Birjeda, Hawk briefed the new crew that was there to relieve him and took Colonel Jarvis with them to find more targets. Hawk was satisfied with a good day of hunting. Chapter 46. Planning Process at Work. 5 December 1990. CENTCOM Forward HQ. Military Technological College. Muscat, Oman. General Schless had arranged for Major Stuba and the Jedi Majors to get the latest intelligence update before they started planning the offensive operation to liberate the UAE. Schless was interested as well, and decided to sit in on the briefing. Once introductions were made and everyone was seated, a lieutenant colonel pulled down the first slide, which showed the task organization for the Iraqi army. Gentlemen, the 1st Republican Guard Corps has withdrawn from the UAE and has been replaced by the 9th Iraqi Corps. If you're not Republican Guard, then you're second string in the mind of the Iraqi leadership and Saddam. However, they've been upgraded with some of the latest Soviet equipment. The question is, do they really know how to use it? If the Soviet advisors that are with them have anything to say about it, the answer is yes. Currently, the 9th Corps is deployed along the UAE and Omani border with the 10th Armored Division in the north. The 1st Infantry Division deployed in Al Ain. The 17th Armored Division deployed south of Al Ain, and 49th Infantry Division along the border south of the 17th. The 45th Division on the southern border from Arada to Al Yarya, and the 52nd Armored Division acting as a corps reserve along the coast south of Abu Dhabi. His logistical support is coming from Iraq over water to Dubai and Abu Dhabi as well as along the coast highway. The briefing officer indicated each position with a laser pointer as he spoke. "Any questions?" he asked. Stuba raised his hand slightly. "Sir, I thought the 49th and 45th were up in Al-Jubail and Dammam." "They were, but they were brought down in the past 5 days and rejoined the Corps," the briefing officer said. "Any other questions?" As there were none, he continued. The terrain along the border varies from desert sand dunes in the south to rugged mountainous terrain in the north. In the south, the dunes run northeast to southwest. Dunes are approximately 200 feet high, with approximately 1/8 to 1 mile between dunes. This terrain does not favor a defender, as there are just too many passages through the dunes to be covered. However, this doesn't favor the attacker either, as you'll have difficulty massing forces in the area. That's probably why he positioned the 52nd Armored Division in this area, to counterattack a force coming out of the dunes," he said, pausing for a moment. "Having said that, you will note he's positioned the 49th Infantry Division in this dune area, as the area between the dunes will afford good mobility to an armor force attempting to move through it. He's positioned the 49th to be a tripwire to alert the 52nd, and have it counterattack in this area where the dunes stop, and the ground offers good maneuver room to mass a force and counterattack. The 17th Armored is also in a dune area, but he has positioned his forces right along the border, taking advantage of the obstacle created by the buildings and houses that occupy this area. In addition, he's emplaced tank ditches and other obstacles. Positioning along the border and the lesser defended area to the south will provide him with an opportunity to strike anyone going against the 49th in the northern flank as the 52nd counterattacks to the front. The 1st Infantry Division is occupying Al Ain and is heavily fortifying the town. They won't wait for an attack, but will begin engaging targets that appear. From Al Ain north, the border is very rugged mountain terrain, with really only one road that could be used by any sizable force, and that's the road from Fujairah. He has a small garrison in Fujairah to guard the port area. "Are there any questions about the disposition of his forces in the UAE?" the briefing officer asked. General Schless looked over at his team of Jedi majors, who all shook their heads. I think we're good. Let's move on, General Schless said. Yes, sir. The briefer placed another map on the map board. In red, the typical color for enemy forces on a map, the locations of the 2nd Iraqi Corps and the 2nd Republican Guard Corps were depicted. With his laser pointer in hand, the briefer began, The 2nd Republican Guard Corps is in a defensive posture around the city of Medina. The 7th Adnan Motorized Division was involved in heavy and continuous fighting all the way to Medina, and then got into some serious door-to-door fighting in Medina. They haven't been able to hold the city or put down the resistance and are heavily engaged. The 5th Mechanized Division walked into a buzzsaw from the 82nd on Medina Ridge and are now in defensive positions, barely hanging on. Both of these divisions we estimate at 50% strength. Questions? He asked, and there were none. The 2nd Iraqi Army Corps has stretched his supply lines as far as he can go. At this time, the 2nd Infantry Division is occupying Tabuk and is at 80% strength. The 14th Mechanized Division is just south of Tabuk and is at 30% strength, having been hit repeatedly in airstrikes. The 51st Infantry Division attempted to swing to the east and link up in Medina, but got caught by the 2nd Brigade of the 101st and has been reduced to 1 regiment that has pulled back to Al-Jahara. The 7th Infantry Division attempted to push through the 101st on the west and was chewed up by the 1st and 3rd Brigades of the division and pulled back to Mughaira. They're about 50% strength now. Only the 37th Infantry Division hasn't seen significant combat, but has been hit a couple of times by airstrikes. They're currently located at Taka. Any questions about these units? Again, the audience was silent. Finally, General Schless spoke up. You've said nothing about the 1st Republican Guard Corps. I was just coming to them, sir. The 1st Republican Guard Corps swapped places with the 9th Iraqi Corps, and the headquarters for the 1st RG Corps is in Al-Hofuf, we believe from what we've determined through signals intercepts. His divisions are positioning themselves along a line from Az-Salwa on the east coast to Al-Halyan to Al-Karj on the west. One division is located in Al-Hofuf, along with the Corps' headquarters. We haven't determined yet which division is which, nor have we been able to locate the 4th Al-Fau Infantry Division. I notice a large goose egg for the 4th and 7th Iraqi Corps. Want to enlighten us about them? Major Stuba asked. Sure, the 4th Corps had been following the 2nd RG Corps and took over responsibility for Buraida, Unaiza, and the area southeast to Riyadh. Of the 8 divisions in that 4th Corps, we have identified an armor division at Al-Artawiya and a mechanized division at Hayl in the west. There are infantry divisions located at Buraida and Unaiza, as well as 2 divisions in Riyadh. 1 division is located around Shakra, and 1 division is unaccounted for at this time. These divisions form a 2nd defensive belt backing up the 2nd Republican Guard Corps, the briefing officer explained. And the 7th Corps? General Schless asked. Sir, that's his 2nd belt for the 1st Republican Guard Corps. The 7th Corps has 8 divisions with 3 of those infantry divisions in Kuwait, an infantry division each in Al-Jubail and Dammam, an infantry division at King Khalid International Airport, and an armored division at Ash Shayit. The Corps headquarters is located at Al-Kafji. That, gentlemen, concludes the locations of the known Iraqi units, the briefing officer concluded. Well, you certainly have given us enough to think about. Major Stuba, have you got any questions? General Schless asked. Do you have the locations of any obstacles that he's constructing or minefields that he's put in? Stuba asked. At this time, I do not expect major obstacles just forward of his positions. He hasn't bothered to put in the million-mine minefields of World War II. You've received a brief on the minefields in the Strait, haven't you? The briefer asked. Yeah, we're good there. What's his air power like? Major Rumgay asked. He's able to attain air superiority for limited periods of time, and air parity most of the time. The Air Force has been hitting his airfields in Saudi pretty hard. At this point, the President has restricted us from hitting air bases in Iraq, the briefer stated. Okay, gentlemen, if there are no more questions for the Colonel, then let's get our thinking caps on and start developing some courses of action, General Schless said, standing and signaling that the briefing was concluded. Major Stuba and his team returned to their office and began assessing the enemy situation. Jack, that's a hell of a lot of bad guys. I'm beginning to think we still don't have the forces to go all the way. We can do the UAE part, but I'm not sure after that, Jim Rumgay said with a look of concern on his face. If this is all we have to work with, then we're going to have to somehow whittle down the odds big time, Bob Peters interjected. Let's not get ahead of ourselves before we map the first phase out. Let's look at the liberation of the UAE and see how that finishes up and what assumptions we make before we attempt to eat the whole pie at once, Roy McLean said. Everyone looked up to Roy a bit, as he was usually the far-sighted thinker. Fred Thompson, the one Air Force officer in the group, said nothing but just took it all in. Okay, let's first look at what we have to work with on the day this kicks off, Jack said, and began writing on a whiteboard. As he wrote, Roy read off the list of assets. Available Forces Ground. Corps Headquarters. 3 Corps HQ. Sotut Corps Amatu. 7 Corps HQ. Divisions Army. 24th 1st Cav, 1st ID, 3rd Armored, 1st Armored, 101st ABN, 82nd ABN, 50th NG Armored, 28th Infantry, NG, 29th Infantry, NG, 35th Infantry, NG. Marine. 1st Marine Div, 2nd Marine Div. British. 1st British Armoured Div. Egyptian. 3rd Mech Div, 4th Armoured Div. Host Nation Units. North Omani Brigade, reinforced. United Arab Emirates Mechanized Battalion. Task Force Othman. Kuwaiti Al-Fatah Brigade. Kuwaiti 25 Mechanized Battalion. Bahraini Motorized Infantry Company. Task Force Abu Bakr. 2nd Brigade, Saudi National Guard. Task Force Tariq. Royal Saudi Marine Battalion. Task Force West. Royal Saudi 8th Mechanized Brigade. Royal Saudi 10th Mechanized Brigade. Royal Saudi 45th Armor Brigade. Regiments: 2nd Armored Cav Regiment, 3rd Armored Cav Regiment. Combat Aviation Brigades. 12th Combat Aviation Brigade. 18th Combat Aviation Brigade. 6th Combat Aviation Brigade. When Jack was done writing, everyone stepped back and looked at what they had. Bob was the first to speak up. So we have 3 Corps headquarters to control 11 U.S. divisions, 1 British division, 2 Egyptian divisions, 2 armored cavalry regiments, 3 combat aviation brigades, and 5 host nation task forces, and 1 Marine headquarters to control 2 Marine divisions, 1 being at sea, he pointed out, thinking out loud more than instructing his fellow Jedi majors. Let's not forget the air assets, Major Thompson said. We have 5 aircraft carriers and another arriving shortly, each with about 58 fighter aircraft and an attack squadron of 14 aircraft. That's 340 fighters and 84 attack aircraft. Then we have 134 Air Force fighter squadrons with 24 aircraft in each squadron for 3,216 aircraft. That's just in the AO, not counting what the heavy bombers from Diego Garcia are bringing. The 3rd Marine Wing has 40 Harrier attack aircraft, 48 Hornets, and 10 A-6 Intruders, along with support aircraft and Cobra gunships. Those aircraft will primarily be supporting the Marine divisions in the overall air tasking order, Major Fred Thompson said. I understand there was a bit of a disagreement between Horner and Boomer over how those aircraft would be used, McLean said. Let's say it's been resolved to everyone's satisfaction, Mike Monroe, the token Marine officer on the team, responded. No one bothered to ask how it had been resolved, but it had been. It seemed that General Horner wanted to include the Marine Corps aircraft in the general air tasking order each day, and not necessarily in support of the Marine units on the ground. General Boomer wanted those aircraft in support of the Marine units. Stuba regained control of the meeting. Okay, it's obvious we don't have enough forces to commit 3 divisions against each of their divisions, so we're going to have to look at fixing some in place and penetrating elsewhere with at least a 3-to-1 ratio. We also should consider a deception plan if possible. First thing we need to do is move the 1st Marine Division off Masira Island and get them on the mainland to be in position to launch an attack. The 2nd Marine is at sea, and we only have enough Gator Navy ships for 1 division to conduct an amphib landing, Monroe pointed out. Once we have a plan that's acceptable, I'll get General Schless to cut the order. It's either that or they're going to be left out of the fight, and I don't think General Boomer is going to buy into that, Stuba said. Jack, why don't we break down into 3 two-man teams and develop 3 courses of action? We can come back together in the morning and present our courses of action to the group, Major Mike Monroe suggested. Sounds good. How about me and Jim, Roy and Fred and Bob and Mike? We meet back here in the morning and lay it all out, Jack said. With that, everyone broke up into groups and started looking over maps. The next morning, the group assembled back in the office. They hadn't invited anyone to this first session, as this was their time to pick apart the courses of action that had been developed by each group. Who wants to go first? Jack asked. We might as well get things started, Bob said, and stood to hang his map overlay. We'll call this course of action 1. We envision an amphibious landing in the north on this stretch of beach south of Dubai. It's a 47-kilometer-wide beach with few homes or shops, and the hydrography will support an over-the-beach landing. He indicated an area from Mina Jebel Ali south for 47 kilometers. From there, they'll push inland to strike the 10th Armored Division from the rear, while simultaneously the 1st Marine Division attacks north towards the 10th Armored Division. The host nation forces attack to fix the forces in Al Ain in place. 3 divisions attack the 17th Armored Division, while 3 divisions attack the 49th Division with a reserve division to exploit the penetration. In the south, 2 divisions attack to fix and destroy the 45th Division. The Exploitation Division attacks the 52nd Division and fixes in place until additional forces can support. Questions? Bob asked. I like the amphib operation and the actions against the 10th Armored. I think you're a bit light with the penetration force and their ability to fix and hold the 52nd for any period of time, Roy pointed out. Roy, let's see what you have, Jack indicated. We see the same amphib op in the north. We didn't commit anyone against the forces in Al Ain as their infantry and hunkered down in the city. We don't want to be engaging the city with artillery or getting bogged down in street fighting, so we're bypassing it. We have 3 divisions going against the 17th Armored Division and 4 divisions plus the host nation forces going against the 49th Division. The 2 divisions will go after the 45th Division. The 4 divisions and host nation forces will continue the attack to the 52nd Division, Roy explained. Once the 52nd is destroyed, this will position forces well to take on the 1st Republican Guard Corps, if they counterattack or position us well to continue the attack against the 1st Republican Guard Corps, should they hold in place. No objections were raised. Okay, let's see what you got, Jack, Roy said. We also planned the amphibious landing in the north and the actions against the 10th Armored Division. We didn't commit anyone to Al Ain as, like you, we don't want to be bogged down in street fighting. We did, however, place the host nation forces against the north flank of the 17th Armored, with one division on the southern flank of the 17th. Another division would go against the northern flank of the 49th Division, and one division on the southern side of the 49th. That leaves us 5 divisions to penetrate over the 45th and take on the 52nd. It gives us flexibility as I visualize one of those 5 possibly turning north and striking the 49th in the rear, allowing one division to hit and fix the 45th in place, and 3 divisions pass between the 45th and 49th to take out the 52nd, Jack stated. Everyone moved closer to the map and began studying Jack's proposal. I like that it puts a much larger force against the 52nd, Roy said. The terrain here in the south on the Omani side is better for dispersing a large force, as the terrain isn't as bad, say, in front of the 17th, Peters pointed out. The sand dunes aren't as bad in the 45th sector as they are in the 49th sector, too. I say we present all 3 courses of action and recommend the 3rd. The other advantage with course of action 3 is that it positions up to 5 divisions if the 1st Republican Guard Corps moves against us. Okay, now what about on the Western Front? Can't forget about those people, Jack indicated. Everyone looked over the maps again. Roy was the first to speak up. Well, for the forces available, we have the 82nd and the 101st in place, as well as the 10th and 8th Saudi brigades, the remnants of the 45th Brigade. We still have the 29th, 28th, and 35th National Guard divisions in the process of deploying. Why not wait the 16th Airborne Corps with those 3 divisions? That would give Luck 5 divisions to fight with. With the Saudi units, he could hold the 2nd Iraqi Corps at bay, especially if we keep pounding them with airstrikes the way we have been, and use the 2 National Guard divisions and the 82nd and 101st to take out the 2nd Republican Guard Corps. Once that's done, a decision can be made to turn and go after the 2nd Iraqi Corps, or to head off towards the 4th Iraqi Corps. Certainly they couldn't take on the 4th Corps, but the threat of them would hold the 4th Corps in position so it couldn't support the 1st Republican Guard Corps. I like that, Jim Rumgay said. It secures their logistics tail. It provides good lines of communications and puts pressure on the center, fixing it in place. Let's write them up and call in General Schless for his approval, Jack said, and the meeting broke up to put pen to paper.
Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss another video.
In the meantime, we have plenty of reading material to keep you busy. You can find it all on our website, frontlinepublishinginc.com.